Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my twice weekly live webcast. A couple of minutes late this morning, sorry about that. The postman arrived, of course, just as I was about to go on air. What have I got for you in today's show? It's mostly news today, actually. A police stop in South Wales appears to have gone wrong because it has left a motorcyclist dead and a driver injured. And in Derbyshire, the police there are under fire for an insulting compensation offer after a collision resulting from, or at least partly resulting from, a badly parked police van engaged in a recovery. The former US spy Anne Sekulas has said that she won't return to the UK for sentencing, and driving examiners are due to go on strike too. Meanwhile, Royal Enfield are taking control of their own UK distribution network. Suzuki has closed their racing website, or will close it, I should say, more accurately, and their social media accounts at the end of this month. And there will be an affordable MV, at least, if you want a scooter. And finally, today's discussion point. I'll be coming back to Sharp, the helmet rating regime that operates in the UK, which is due to be updated, as we talked about Eurocap getting involved in testing motorcycle riding kit, and there were some comments about Sharp. Well, here's the latest on what's going on with that testing regime. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 minutes or so while I take you through all those news stories. Don't forget, if you've got a question, comment, anything you want to ask, do drop me a line back and I will try to answer it while I'm on air if I possibly can. If I can't on air, I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Clive's looked in. Good morning, Clive. Christine's here too. Nigel's here. Richard and Kevin are all with us this morning, along with a few people who haven't announced themselves. So that's good to see. Thank you all for looking in. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Now, just before I get on with the news, just one quick reminder. There is, of course, the latest of my online talk series events going out tonight, 7th of December at 8 p.m. It is the Science of Being Seen presentation. It is the full talk, so it covers the reasons behind the Smidsy crash and what we can do about it. Basically, what I'm trying to do with these talks is debunk the idea that drivers don't look for motorcycles. They do, but there are some very, very good reasons to do with positioning of the motorcycle, to do with the way the eye and the brain work to interpret the visual input, and the way we just simply misjudge speed and distance sometimes too, that cause drivers to make mistakes around motorcycles. And we'll look at why it is that high-vis clothing, day riding lights don't seem to have had the positive effect that was claimed for them. And finally, I'll put it to you that the best defense is being aware of the risk of the accident, knowing why it happens, knowing how it happens, knowing where it happens, knowing what, more importantly, we as motorcyclists can do about it. I think that is a genuinely life-saving point that has been missed with many of the Think Bike campaigns. Right, so that is at 8 o'clock tonight, 7th of December. Do look in if you possibly can. Tickets are still available for that, and if you can't make it live, don't forget it is available on catch up for at least 72 hours. And if people really can't make it within the 72 hours, drop me a line and I will extend that open period for you. So tickets for that are available. And I'll just give you a quick reminder, January's event, which will be on the 11th of January, I think it was, second Wednesday, to give you time to recover from New Year, basically, will be on the fascinating field of sports psychology and how we can apply that thinking to the sport of motorcycling. And in particular, I'll be looking at the use of a technique called visualization, which allows us to put ourselves into a situation that it is very difficult to practice in real life, but to use our own inbuilt simulator, our brain, to do the job for us. So that talk is also available. Tickets are available for that now, and both on that link that I have just popped up for you. So do, if you can possibly make it, come over and join me tonight, and hopefully see you in just over a month's time for the sports psychology talk too. Right, okay, so on with the news. Well, South Wales Police have voluntarily referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct over an incident in which a 19-year-old motorcyclist died in a collision with another vehicle. The crash happened on a Swansea road shortly after 8 p.m. on Saturday night after an attempted traffic stop by police. Now, there are no details of exactly what happened come out about this yet, but what has been said is that independent investigators went to the scene, and a spokesman for the IOPC did actually say, "We can confirm we have opened an independent investigation relating to a fatal collision that occurred last night shortly after 8 p.m. at St Helens Road, Swansea. The collision involved a motorcycle and another vehicle, both being driven by members of the public, following an attempted traffic stop by South Wales Police. The motorcyclist sadly died at the scene, and the driver of the second vehicle was taken to hospital for treatment." So no details of that. I will follow that as I can and report back if I do find any further information. So this story, the second one today, is actually a follow-up to a story from a few shows back. Now, you may recall that I reported on an inquest at Chesterfield Coroner's Court, which was looking at the circumstances surrounding a fatal crash on Snake Pass, where George Wakefield, 19, was riding his motorcycle but died following a collision with an oncoming vehicle. The crash resulted in injuries, and medical complications sadly actually resulted in his death. Now, the car which hit Mr. Wakefield had been attempting to maneuver around a parked police van and a recovery vehicle that themselves had been dealing with an abandoned motorcycle. The bad news is they were parked within 50 meters of a blind bend. No signs were put out to warn approaching drivers that there could be traffic on the wrong side of the road because of this recovery operation, and there were no police attempting to manage the traffic flow around the parked vehicle. So the inquest did find that both the position of the police vehicle and the police management of the recovery did contribute to George's death. Following the inquest, which concluded on the 4th of November, Derbyshire Constabulary offered the family £2,600 in compensation, and a second offer of £3,400 was subsequently made. Now, Father Darren Wakefield described both sums as an insult. He said, "Our solicitor was told that based on police findings, George was 74% responsible. We turned down the money." Now, Mr. Wakefield is also a motorcyclist, and he has criticised the findings of the forensic scene investigator, who estimated that George was travelling at between 50 and 85 miles per hour on the bend prior to the collision. And Mr. Wakefield has said that even a MotoGP rider wouldn't be going at 85 around that corner. He also claimed that in the earlier stages of the investigation, they told me, quote, they couldn't work out speeds from a collision with a motorbike into a car, which sounds rather odd, I have to say. The 11-person jury did find it probable that the speed at which George was travelling on his motorcycle did contribute to his death, but neither officer at the scene was trained in motorcycle or in vehicle recovery to take account of circumstances like this. Now, Mr. Wakefield was also a Highway England officer, worker for 18 years, and he said, "I visited the site myself and I couldn't believe the lack of precaution or risk assessment. I have worked in traffic management for a long time, and in that situation there is no way I could control two-way traffic on my own, never mind an officer who had not been trained in that situation." Now, speaking for Derbyshire Police, Chief Superintendent Dave Kirkby, he said, "Following the inquest, George Wakefield's family have engaged with the force's legal team and have instigated a civil claim. So to discuss this any further would be inappropriate. The circumstances of the collision have been reviewed in great detail over the course of this inquest, and it is clear that more could have been done on that day to prevent George's death. The two officers have attended a misconduct meeting subsequently, where they were given a written warning, and an e-learning package has now been developed by Derbyshire Police for proper protocols to follow when recovering vehicles on bends, which is a bit like shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted, in my opinion, but there we are. Right, so that's a fairly sad case, really, isn't it, I think? Another sad story is that the former US spy Anne Sakulis, who pleaded guilty to causing the death of the 19-year-old rider Harry Dunn by careless driving back in October, has reportedly been advised by the US government not to attend her sentencing hearing in person. Now, Sakulis was the wife of a CIA employee, Jonathan Sakulis, who was at the time stationed at the US Air Force listening station, RAF Crowson, and she was driving on the wrong side of the road when the collision with Dunn took place outside the military base in Northampton in August 2019. Now, she was due to be sentenced on Thursday, and the sentencing judge had asked her to attend in person, but it appears that the renewed application for her to appear via a video link has been made, and it has been granted by the court. Now, Sakulis left the UK after Dunn's death and had diplomatic immunity asserted on her behalf by the US administration, and therefore she attended both previous court hearings via a video link from her lawyer's office in Washington, D.C. The sentencing judge at the time of the guilty plea, she did so. That was Miss Justice Chima Grubb. She said the personal attendance and voluntary surrender to the court of Mrs. Sakulis would provide weighty evidence indeed of genuine remorse. She added that the offence carried a maximum sentence of 5 years imprisonment. And she continued, any sentence I pass is unlikely to be enforceable while the defendant remains outside the United Kingdom. There is no order I can make to compel her appearance at the Central Criminal Court for sentence. At the same time, there is no barrier whatsoever to prevent her travelling to the UK for sentence. So, yeah, whatever you think about the case of that involved there, obviously, what caused a lot of upset was her skipping the country under diplomatic immunity almost immediately after the event. The problem is that she cannot be sent to prison while she's in the US, whether that's the appropriate sentence for someone who made basically a slip. She left the airbase and just drove onto the wrong side of the road. You know, it's not an uncommon event, frankly, when you are a foreign citizen driving in a different country. But yeah, I think the whole way the thing has been handled has not been great. Right, okay, something else which will cause contention is that driving examiners will strike during December and January. Now, some members of the Public and Commercial Services Union are planning strikes as part of national industrial action over pay, pensions, jobs and redundancy terms. The strikes will impact people trying to take their car and motorcycle driving tests, as well as other driving tests and other activities that the DVSA carry out, such as check tests on instructors. Now, the strike action will not affect anyone who plans to take their theory test during the strike periods, and the strikes will impact different parts of the country at different times, so it's up to you, if you do have a test booked, to check to see what's going on. Now, the PCS said in a statement, we're now in a position to call significant industrial action in support of our claim for a 10% pay rise, pensions justice, job security, and no cuts to redundancy terms. Action involving all members in the areas which meet the legal requirements would be called to have the maximum effect, including coordinated action with other unions. Members taking sustained action in targeted areas put major pressure on the government, will receive significant financial support from the union. PCS will continue the campaign to win what you deserve at work. Now, the DVLA have told candidates not to assume that their tests will be cancelled, even on dates when the strike is being held, because not all examiners are members of that union, and there are the possibility that members of the union will choose not to take strike action. Now, you can change the date of your test, but you will need to give at least 3 days notice, or you will lose your deposit, as it were. If the test is affected by strike action, the DVSA say they will automatically rebook your driving test for you. You'll be sent new details within 5 to 10 working days, and you don't need to contact the DVSA in that instance. Right, now don't forget, set a reminder. This show goes out every Wednesday and Sunday. It's nearly always live. Occasionally it's recorded, and even more rarely I miss a show altogether. One thing I have noticed, of course, is that the December the 25th just happens to fall on one of my show dates this year. I'm still wondering exactly what I'm going to do about that, whether to do a live Christmas special or whether to do a recorded one. I will let you know as soon as I have worked out what I'm going to do myself. YouTube.com/Survival Skills UK is where all the old shows are hosted in their own channel over there. So if you've missed any, you want to catch up, do go and take a look. So that is what's coming for the next couple of weeks. Now, it's not surprising, probably, that due to the rather spectacular and probably unexpected sales success of the new generation of Royal Enfield motorcycles, that the Indian manufacturer is actually looking to take control of their own distribution network from May the 1st next year. And that will end a 9-year-old partnership with MotoGP. Now, based in Chorley in Lancashire, MotoGP are said to be the largest independent importer and distributor of two-wheel products in the UK. They do also handle Benelli, for example. As Royal Enfield are looking to expand their range, they will have new variants of both the existing 350 single and the 650 twin ranges coming soon, plus a new upcoming 450cc platform. More on that in the next show, incidentally. Royal Enfield will manage their own sales and dealerships. Now, Aaron Gopal, who is the head of Royal Enfield's European business markets, told MCN ahead of the official announcement, "We have a fantastic business model working with distributors. It's done really well for us. But as we scale up operations, and in the UK this year, we've been a clear number one in the mid-sized motorcycle segment for the first time outside of India. This is for us to really strengthen that position. And number two, it's for us to have a better idea of what's really happening in the market. It's very critical for Royal Enfield to be managing operations directly to one country in Europe. Customer motorcycle usages are quite common across this entire region, and I strongly believe there should be at least one market where we should be directly involved with dealers and customers. It helps us get feedback quicker. It helps us to respond to market requirements more quickly," he said. So the implication there is that Royal Enfield actually see the UK as something of a test bed, presumably whether they can then move into other European countries with their products. Interesting times ahead. It's sort of back to the future, really, isn't it, with the Royal Enfield brand, which I believe dates back to 1901 here in the UK, at least in terms of motorcycles. Shifting to India and being seen as a bit of a joke motorcycle right into the 2000s. They were imported in limited numbers, but they've turned things around completely rebuilt their model range and completely rebuilt the end user view of what a Royal Enfield means. Now, one company that is not proposing to expand in any way, shape or form is Suzuki. We have seen over the last few weeks that their model range, has cut back to almost zero. They have launched a couple of new bikes at the latest round of bike shows, but really the pages are very, very thin. And it probably is not unconnected with their withdrawal from MotoGP and the World Endurance Championship. And I've been reporting on that story for some time. So the MotoGP effort has gone. They had to pay a sort of severance payment to the organisers, Dorna, because they quit their contract early. They've also pulled their official support for the French racing team, which uses Suzuki's in the Endurance World Championship. And they are also pulling out officially from various superbike championships around the world. But the announcement last week really does show that this is the end. Suzuki are taking the definitive step of actually closing their racing websites and social media accounts, and that will complete their withdrawal from two-wheeled racing. Now, the SuzukiRacing.com site was actually created as far back as 1999, and it's reported race events and achievements for all categories of Suzuki's worldwide racing activities. It not only covered MotoGP and the Endurance World Championship, where the manufacturers actually won numerous championships during the 1000cc era. It covers the BSB, World Superbikes, AMA, Motocross, as well as Moto America. Now, in a short statement, Suzuki did say that they are taking the opportunity to thank their visitors over the years for supporting the company. I'll just zoom in a little bit on that. You can see basically all that was being shut down there. It says that the Team Suzuki Twitter account and the Instagram account are also to be closed. Now, it won't stop racing activities by Suzuki distributors, so you will probably still see Suzuki's out on the track. Suzuki has, for example, been very successful in the US Moto America series over the years, but there will be no official page reporting on those results. Now, one question that is being asked is why take the site down? After all, it is a record of Suzuki's past achievements over the last 2 decades and a bit. So the shutdown at the end of the month, I suppose, on the one hand, it does actually draw a solid line under Suzuki's motorcycle sport activities. With the website open, there would always be a question about whether or not the company was planning a return when times were better. Now, you may recall that they pulled out of MotoGP for a couple of years, and then they returned just a couple of years ago. But this time it really does seem it's the end, and it's almost though as if Suzuki don't want any reminders there of their accomplishments hanging over them as they transition away from the internal combustion motorcycle era. Right, okay, a couple of comments have popped up here. Okay, interesting one. We have a couple of spam comments. I'll get rid of those. Right. At least it shows people are actually finding the show. Right, Kevin has said circumstances of the Bend collision are tragic. However, this reinforces the value of stopping the distance you can see or reasonably expect to be clear. Yeah, that's the problem though, isn't it? Reasonably expect to be clear. You do expect not to find cars on the wrong side of the road passing stationary obstacles. I appreciate what you're saying, Kevin. And you know, I would hope that if it would be me going around that corner, I would have been capable of stopping. But the sheer surprise of finding a car creeping around an obstacle on the wrong side of the road will derail even the best trained rider. And this is one of the things I want to talk about in the talk next time out, actually in January, the live online web series talk, where I will be looking at the visualization technique, because this is the kind of situation that we genuinely cannot practice for. It's all very well plowing up and down the car park, doing emergency stops and flicking the back wheel 4 foot in the air, but if you can't get those brakes on as rapidly as you need to get them on in a genuine emergency, because we weren't expecting to find a car on the wrong side of the road passing a parked police van, it doesn't really make any odds. So even, this is the point I'm trying to make, even the best riders in the world will fall foul of problems like this simply because it's unexpected. So what we think we can achieve in emergencies doesn't always pan out in real life. But you do have to ask why there were no signs out, and even why they attempted the recovery, why they didn't get some assistance. I think there are a lot of questions there that need answering. So right, okay, he's Kevin sort of edited his post a little. Right, okay, so yes, interesting that my webcast has now got hot enough to attract some spam on YouTube. Right, okay, so yeah, lots of questions about that particular crash. I think we'll be hearing about that for a while yet. Now, okay, I actually managed to find you much in the way of motorcycles this week, because there's not been much in the way of motorcycle news. Of course, everything that got launched pretty much got launched at the November show. So what I do have for you, though, is what might be an affordable motorcycle from MV Agusta. Now, it's certainly not something that you can generally accuse MV of building, because they're very proud of their sort of hand-built ethos. But MV, in the current messy business world of who owns what, the ownership of MV Agusta actually requires some detective skills to unravel. Now, as I understand it, and this I have to is my interpretation of where the situation stands at the moment, I believe MV Agusta are currently majority owned by a UK Russian investment fund, and they appointed Timur Sardarov as CEO back in 2018. Now, there are various people from the old sort of Italian MV days working underneath him. But last month, Pira Mobility, who you probably remember are the owners of KTM, they acquired a 25.1% stake in the formerly Italian flagship company. Now, that investment sees KTM taking over and hopefully expanding, that's what they hope for anyway, MV's dealer and distribution network in Europe and North America. But prior to that, MV Agusta had also entered into a collaboration with the Chinese manufacturer QJ Motor, and they worked on a bike I also reported some months back, the MV Agusta Lucky Explorer 5.5 project, which has now produced a rather nice looking adventure bike with the old Lucky Strike sort of color scheme, and that uses a Benelli engine, which is built by QJ Motor, of course, for the outwardly Italian but Chinese owned Benelli firm, the TRK 502 motor. So if you're still following me, what's happened now should totally confuse you, because it appears that MV Agusta have also partnered up with the Taiwanese brand Kymco to develop what they are calling the Ampelio, which is a prototype electric scooter. And the new collaborative project was actually shown off at the Milan show last week, or last month rather. Now, although the bike on display is only a prototype, it seems that development work has been ongoing for a couple of years, and the machine is based on the Kymco IronX S7 scooter. And this is actually a screen grab from Kymco's own bike launch video, which showed the bike being ridden enthusiastically by some keen riders, sort of in some beautiful scenery. You can see them there, they've parked at the beach. Anyway, the bike on show was only a prototype, but it does seem to be based on this IronX S7 scooter, and that machine was announced back in June last year as one of a range of 3 IronX scooters, and they all use the IronX slot-in battery pack, which is capable of being charged at home or swapped out at a charging station. And the top of the range IronX S7R version, that was seen with a 7.2 kilowatt motor, dual battery packs give a maximum range of 155 kilometers and a top speed of 95 kilometers per hour. Now, as far as I can see, the machine hasn't reached Kymco's UK distributor, but the MV Augusta Ampelio appears to be a badged version of that sports model, because it's said to offer a peak power of 9.7 horsepower, which just happens to be a tad under 7.2 kilowatts, and it is powered by two 1.7 kilowatt hour batteries, which can be charged at home. So it sounds like the same model with a sticker on the front saying MV Augusta. Price, availability, no ideas on that. But I suspect what it means is that the Kymco will not be distributing their own machines, except possibly the lower powered ones, which are sort of moped. There's one of a moped sort of category. It looks like it's possible that MV will actually take over the distribution of the more sporty bike. Right, okay, so where are we? On to the final item for today. Don't forget, if you do want to support me, you can pop over to my Ko-fi page, where you can not only catch up with all my writing, but you can also find actually the previous 11s shows, though listed chronologically, so not so easy to find as they are on YouTube. But if you drop me £3 over there, a cuppa buys you a month's access to all my work, and there are hundreds, literally hundreds of better biking articles aimed at everybody from basically beginners to expert riders. So do pop over there, take a look, and if you like what you see, I would very much appreciate a cuppa to keep me coming back and producing these shows. So, right, where are we? We're on to our final discussion point of the day. Now, on Sunday, I did mention that Euro NCAP, the organisation that rates and arguably drives forward car safety, is considering testing motorcycle equipment. And on Sunday, I talked about how they were going to be looking potentially at safety clothing. And in response to that, there were some comments and criticisms of the SHARP helmet rating system. Now, SHARP, it stands for Safety Helmet Assessment and Rating Program, was set up in 2007 to provide an independent testing program intended to inform consumers about the relative safety of motorcycle helmets via a simple to understand 5-star rating system. So the least well performing helmets would get a 1-star, the top performers will get 5 stars. And it also is there to provide advice on helmet selection to riders in the UK. It's funded by the UK government through the Department for Transport. Now, along with its recommendations regarding overall safety of a helmet, SHARP recommends that motorcyclists make sure they actually do choose a helmet that fits properly, because they ran a study, TfL ran a study in 2019, which found that around 25% of motorcyclists are actually wearing the wrong size helmet. Now, SHARP currently rates full face and modular helmets, otherwise known as flip fronts or system helmets. And on the 2nd of November, SHARP published their safety rating for the Shoei NXR2. And that takes the total number of helmets that have been tested by SHARP to 518. SHARP's also become internationally recognized. A lot of people check out its ratings before buying a helmet in other English-speaking countries. Now, one statement which I have heard repeated elsewhere too was that since SHARP only tests impacts in certain areas, some helmet manufacturers only design helmets to be tough in those locations. Now, I can't find any independent verification of that particular claim. And the fact is that any helmet sold in the UK and Europe, of course, has to meet the UN ECE standards. So even if it were the case, it would actually simply be a case of improving a helmet's performance in specific areas. It wouldn't imply that the rest of the helmet is substandard, which is what some people seem to think. Now, as the news breaks that Shoei are releasing a helmet with a heads-up display. So far, Japan only, also rather expensive. And I'll bring you what I know about that lid in the next show. It does indicate that Sharp needs to move with the times. And so the new Sharp 2025 project aims to review and upgrade the current test and the rating protocols of the Sharp scheme. Now, one specific area of interest is that since the Sharp scheme was launched back in 2007, which is 15 years ago, there is significant new knowledge and understanding about the factors involved in head injuries, including a specific focus on the risks associated with rotational forces, which are actually experienced during real world helmet impacts. Now, if you think about the testing procedures and you watch any of the videos on the test, what they tend to do is hold the helmet in a stationary position and drop a weight on it, which tends to test the helmet for linear impacts, and it also sees to some extent whether the helmet will sort of grab on the surface as well. But what it doesn't test is how the interaction between the head in the shell and the helmet works when the helmet is set spinning in a sort of a lateral impact, a side-on impact, because it's now known that when the helmet spins, when it twists on the head, the resulting twisting force on the skull also then has to, of course, to transfer into the brain to get the brain to spin with the head. But there is something of a lag between the two. So the skull twists, but the brain, momentarily at least, stays still inside it. And it is now known that this causes significant brain injuries. It basically tears the tissue, and that causes major bleeds. So helmet liners which seek to absorb this rotational movement without spinning the head inside the helmet are beginning to be developed. And this has led to some important changes to several international motorcycle helmet test and assessment standards and regulations. And thus to ensure that Sharp stays up to date, the Department for Transport is carrying out a research project to review and upgrade the current test and rating protocols for the scheme. And this is going to be carried out, or is being carried out, by the Transport Research Laboratory. They are being tasked with collecting, reviewing, and critically evaluating the available scientific evidence relating to motorcycle helmet safety and the injury criteria, the kind of thing I've just been talking about. And they'll be doing things like looking at any relevant national and in-depth motorcycle collision data, any international motorcycle test and assessment protocols, and what they will be doing is putting that all together, and at some point in the not too distant future they will be recommending an update to the Sharp scheme. So Sharp currently maybe is still doing a good job in terms of impact protection, but where it looks like it is missing out is on this sort of spinning rotational injury problem. But the update is coming, and it will be looking at that specifically. Right, a couple of comments before I go. Kevin says the comments re-strength the helmets applied only in test area came from staff in a leading helmet retail store. Yes, well, I've also heard staff in a leading retail store rubbishing various CE tests on clothing as well, and MotoCap results in particular. So I always tend to think that people set to sell something are probably the least reliable when it comes to getting informed feedback on anything that is vaguely safety related. So I honestly would not pay too much attention to that one. Right, anyway, that is it for today's show. Thank you all once again for your feedback. I hope you found the content interesting. Just a quick reminder once again before I go, in case you looked in partway through the show, I will be online at 8 p.m. tonight delivering my Science of Being Seen webcast live. Tickets are available. The link is in either the header or in the comment stream for that particular event. The next one will be in January. I think it was the 11th. It's the second Wednesday anyway, and that one will be on the visualization technique and sports psychology generally, and how we can use it to improve our ability to see what's happening on the road. Right, okay, so that's everything I think I wanted to say today. It is a very, very nice day outside at the moment, but I have to say it's also exceedingly chilly here in London. We did have a frost overnight, which rather surprised me. I haven't covered up the geraniums yet, so I hope they're all right. So if you are out there enjoying the sunshine later today, do wrap up warm. It will be a chilly one. So thank you once again for looking in. Hopefully see you on the next show, which will be Sunday. But till then,